Okay, so let's look at one more method you can use to bind your joint to a mesh. So I'm just going to come through and, like we did before, select all of these things, which is going to be selected. So I'm just going to do a marquee selection, and then I will select this object. And now if you're wondering why when I made the marquee selection, this mesh wasn't selected, that's pretty obvious, and that's nice for you to be wondering about it, because in the hierarchy here, you get to find out that handles are selected first before the joint, and the joint is selected first before curves, and curves are selected first before meshes. Okay, it's just simple. And think of it like this, that Maya is more of an animation oriented app, so that simply means that when you have to do animations, there are certain things that come in prior to other things. The mesh is one of the last things that gets to be selected when you're about to animate a character, and then handles are basically the first things that you may want to select just in case you want to move an object. Maybe you want to move an IK, or you want to move like a parent of an object, something like that. So I don't know, that's basically how it works, and I think you should think about it that way. So now we have the joint selected. Next thing we have to select is the mesh. So I'm holding down shift on my keyboard and I'm clicking on the mesh and I'm having it selected. Now this is only possible because here in the channel box I did not reference this object. Okay, it's in a layer but it's not referenced. Okay, so next thing I will do is I'm going to go back to this place where I have the skin, to the menu where I have skin, bind skin, but this time I am not going to make use of the closest. I may not make use of the closest by hierarchy. I may make use of the heat map. Okay, I can still choose not to use the classic linear, but then go with dual quaternium. So I'm going to use the dual quaternium, and I may choose to use the geovoxel. This may take a little bit more time, but the results might be way better. So I'm just going to hit apply, and it may take a while depending on the processing power of your computer, and it's going to give you this result. And this is also depending on the kind of mesh you have, how complicated it is, or how dense the mesh is. Now see what's going to happen. You see, we have a much more refined object compared to when we used the other one. So let's try out these other parts here. So we have a bit of a joint orientation issue here, which we were supposed to fix. And if you want to see how to fix a joint orientation, you should check links in my in the description. I'm going to put links there, or you could go to the channel and you can find it. Okay, so I'm going to come through and I will just simply rotate this object. So these other parts are parts where we can now simply just come through and fix, and because we don't have so much stuff going on, so we can just fix those parts. These parts work. Let's look at these. The head works. Okay, fine, so it works. And that's basically it. So other things you can do once you have done this is, when you have issues like this, there is a deformer that you can make use of. That deformer is something that you most probably have used before. You've never heard of it. You want to use it now because you're in this tight corner and you don't want to start painting weight. So you go to deform, you come to delta mush, and you click on delta mush, and then you may have some very desirable results. Okay, so can you see we don't have all of that crazy crease that we had initially? And let's come through and look at this as well. You see, it's way more smoother now. So because we have delta mush, now you can go ahead and play with this too and see how it works for you. Now if you want to do your IK and your other stuff, you can check those, how you can make those possible in the channel. I made very 1-minute video about that, something that's going to be way easy for you to know how to make use of, and it's going to help speed up your workflow. And so this is basically it. If you have questions about this, you know what to do, put them in the comment section down below. We have a community place now on the YouTube channel. Okay, so you can head over to the community, you can start a discussion there, and I will talk to you when you have issues. And if you are done with doing what you want to do here, you can simply just test out the animation. Okay, so for you to do that, we can just simply add a keyframe here. And I don't really advise a lot of people to do keyframing with their joints because it's pretty crazy. You keyframing with your joints, you may not be able to fix it properly, in the sense that your joints already have this. Okay, it already has a translation. It already has a translation or a transform parameter, which I would not advise you to play with. Okay, so what we'll do is we're going to go ahead and create a controller, and this controller, we would press down V on our keyboard. Okay, and with V on our keyboard, that simply means we can go ahead and snap it, or you can just simply do it the old way. You know, you can turn this on. Okay, which simply means snapping to point. Let's duplicate that as well. So now we have a duplicate of this and this, and now you're saying NK, I thought you said this has transform parameters and this has transform parameters. Oh yes, I'm going to show you how we can fix that. So here is our neck control CTRL, and here we'll just simply serve as our head control. So let's just go ahead, because we don't want to touch this anymore, and I'm going to call this head control. Okay, so I'm just going to come through and call this head CTRL. So we have this. Okay, so now we have this. Let's go ahead and just change how this should look. You can change that from here, or you can just simply leave it the way it is. And if you let's say I have this selected, you don't like the way that this is being positioned right above the neck, and you want it to be in a much more centralized form, and you don't want to change the position of the pivot, you can right click this and then use the control vertices, not the edge but the control vertices. Okay, so let's just isolate this real quick and select this, not the control, not the edge but the control vertices, guys. Let's turn this off. I'm just going to go ahead, select the control vertices, and then I can push this a little bit lower. And if I come down, you see our pivot is still here, but our object is down. Okay, you can do the same here. I can select the control vertices. I definitely have to start isolating this. I will just simply do this, select all of this object and position this just a little lower, about that point. And then if I select it, you still see we have this bad boy there. Okay, so now we have this here. The next logical thing to do is to freeze the transform, and I'm also going to freeze this transform. If you have anything that you've added to this object, let's say for example, just saying that maybe you deformed this object using a deformer, or you did something some way, somehow, I don't know what you did, and then you can come through and you can delete the history. Okay, so that's simple. Now you see these controllers, they all have zeros here, and they're just scaled to 1, which is the default scale. Same thing happens here, zeros all through, and they're all scaled to 1, which is typically the default scale. And then I can come through and just select the parent, select the child, and do what I want to do. Okay, so let's go to constraint, parent constraint, leave this as is, apply. So now you see the joint now has all of these attached to it, which simply means this joint, whenever you see this, it means there's a constraint that has been added, and this object is now answerable to another object, which is this. Okay, I'm going to come through, do the same thing here, select the head, leave this as maintain offset always. Okay, apply, and then close. Okay, so if you want to see more about constraints channel, okay, then let's come through and let's rotate this and see how it works. Okay. Okay, so we have this horse moving and we have so this part, but now there is this problem that this part now doesn't move because this part doesn't move. So how do you fix this? There's basically just two ways you can fix this, guys. The first way is you can make this a point constraint or a rotate constraint or parent constraint or whatever you want to do, but the easiest way to make this work is to just simply grab the head and just bucket it inside the neck. So once you move the neck, the head joint moves with it. Okay, and that's basically it. So the same applies for every other part of this object. And for us to do that, we need to keyframe, which will be pretty easy. First things I would do is I would just come through and hold down Ctrl and Shift with my rotation turned on, right click and change this to gimbal. Now the reason why I'm changing this to gimbal is so that if I move a particular angle like this, only this is moved. If you switch this to component and you move a particular angle, you may run into issues where you're going to move this and the global and everything here would change. So at this point you may have problems trying to track your object properly to see what's going on. Okay, so just to avoid those tiny issues, guys, you can play with this. If it doesn't work for you, you can go with this or whatever that makes you happy or sleep well at night. Okay, so I'm just going to go ahead and use the gimbal, and I'll turn on this here, which simply is the auto set key. Okay, so this is the auto set key. It simply means that whenever you make a transform, that this automatically happens. So I'm just going to press S on my keyboard because I don't like keying one by one. So I'm just pressing S on my keyboard to just simply key all of this. Now you see the color code changed, and so whenever it is red, it simply means that there is a key. Okay, so I'm just putting that key there. I'll come over to frame 12 and I'm going to do a simple rotation, and because I have this auto key turned on, you can notice that the rotation on X, okay, the rotation on X has a much more saturated red, which simply means there is an active key there. So I'm just positioning that there, and now you can see our horse just comes through like this. And at this point I want to select this and just apply a key, but now I want about 2 frames later for this to happen. Okay, so it snaps a bit too fast, so I'm just going to do this not by 2s, not by 4, but by 8. Okay, so you can just press play, and then we can get to see something like this. And now I can move these all the way to a point, like, let's say since we're working by 8, I can move this to that point and add another keyframe there just to hold it, just to hold this, and then I can come ahead, or I can come through and go to another frame like this, and I can turn this other way. So now if you have problems with this happening left, right, front and back, you can even these out by just simply selecting this object here, and then we can just simply even this key out. So we have a key that's static at 31.9, so let's just simply make this 31 or 32, making that 32, and I don't like it being stale, so instead of making that 32, I'm going to go ahead and just simply make it about 34. Okay, or let's just make it 38 just to give some character to it. Okay, so once we press play, okay, so we have this nice ease, and then it falls back. Okay, so it's like, what'd you say? What'd you say? Okay, so that's about it. So let's play back our object and see what we have. Then we can just simply come through to this part, and that's why you need to make use of controllers, guys. So now I can just turn it down to 0, and then I can turn this down to 0 as well. But now if it's going to go down to 0 and this is going to go down to 0, we would have some very weird movement here, because this is what we'll have now. Okay, so it's not, because we don't have anything holding them together here. We're just having this object just raise the neck and it's flapping back and forth. So I will come through, select this. I was avoiding this, but we just have to do it. There is no way you do animation without doing or using the graph. So I'm going to go over to the Windows. I'll go to animation and graph editor. So with this graph editor, we can do absolutely anything we want. So I'm just going to go ahead and hold these handles, and actually I think I want to position this slightly. Let's look at what we're doing here. I want to position it about 20. Okay, and I want to also have this about this point. So we're having this very nice transform happening here, and you can see that the colors are different because we are working on different angles of this object. So red, green, and blue is for X, Y, and Z for both rotation, scale, and transform. So if you look at it very well, you're going to see that X is for the red. The green, we didn't key anything here, so you cannot see that, but we key the Z, and then you can see it here. So I can just simply just select this and just turn this just a little bit about that point. Let's just bring it lower. Okay, so if we did our job properly, what we can get is, if we press play, yeah, so we get that very nice tiny head wave, I mean. Okay, and so that's basically how you go from adding joints to your object, rigging them, playing with the skin just to see which one works better for you, testing your model out or your rig out, and you know, pretty much do so many things with it. So tell me what you think in the comment section down below. If you're new to this channel, I will suggest you subscribe, guys, because we're going to be doing a lot of stuff like this. And if you've been here, I'm very grateful for your support. You've been making me do a lot of videos. Ask me as much questions as you want about what we've done today, and I'll do my best to get back to you. And what's more, see you guys later. Peace.